Well. It's Friday, and I'm red. Losing $1,000 today. What in the world went wrong, Patrick? What are you doing? How did you mess up so bigly? So bigly. $1,000 red day on a Friday. Talking about it right here in this video, so make sure you guys stay tuned. What's going on, guys? Patrick here. Today, obviously you can see, I'm not very excited because number one, I did things that, it's trading, man. Like, you get into a trade, you feel like you have that, you're like, oh, I'm in it right now. Like the market's going to do what I think it's going to do. I have this idea, like it's Friday. The market's been, just rallying at the end of the day. Like everything is lining up for me to make some money today. And we did the opposite. We ended up losing $1,000. So I pretty much gave back most of the profit from this week. Basically flat on the week now. So after commissions, you got down about $879 and then commissions. So really kind of a lot of, I feel like maybe over trading, but really it was two big trades that ended up screwing me in the end here. And what's really frustrating is, number one, I ended up selling these put options for a loss. They didn't rallied up 100%. I paid 18 cents for these put options on this push here, and then it ended up selling off, and I ended up getting out for a loss, which is, it's so painful, man. It's so painful. So I was buying for this push up here on these puts, and then the market decided it was going to bounce, and I ended up getting out for a loss there on those puts, the 446 puts. Through this move to the downside, we had this pop back up. I ended up getting out of those puts because, like, man, are you kidding me right now? The market's going to now rally back to the high of the day. And, well, look at it now. It just dumped from 449 down there to 447. So we had this big move up from the 447 level. We pushed up to this resistance. We had the resistance up to 450s. We pulled back 449. At this point, I'm like, okay, if we can just hold, if we hold that 449 area, we hold it, there's a very good chance that this wants to push higher, right? Like it wants to push above this resistance here. And what's so frustrating about this is I ended up getting this trade, ended up making money on this trade. It was up like $300 on the day. And again, guys, the worst thing you can do is let a green day turn into a red day, and then especially let a $300 green day turn into a $1,000 loss. I mean, that's really, really bad, really, really bad. So we pushed up here, we got stuck. At this point, I ended up selling most of those call options, so I locked in the profit there, seeing we had the resistance. Now, where did I go wrong? Well, I was like, okay, we're holding here, 449.50, we're holding. So I start buying call options through this move like this. So we have this kind of pullback, and we're thinking, okay, it's going to now ramp back up. This is the key right here, my friends, the key to where I really screwed up. Where did I really mess up at? Right here. This is simple. 449. I knew this was an area that I was like, okay, Patrick, if the 449 area 449.50 area cannot hold, right? We had the 449 support here. It held. If we can't hold this 449 area, if we can't hold it, I'm getting out of the trade. And guess what happened? It ended up breaking below 449.50. This really should have been like, okay, like look at this. See how this got stuck? We had basically these lower highs. I mean, that should have been like the writing on the wall. That should have been like, okay, Patrick, you might want to start thinking about getting out of this position, because you can see we pushed up to that resistance. We then can't push above again, so we're making that lower high, and then that's, pretty good chance at that point this is going to roll off. And if you look, I mean, there was so much resistance there, and that's what's so frustrating about this. And then at this point, I'm like, okay, it breaks below 449.50 here, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, because, we have some support, on the 15-minute chart here. You can see that I'm looking at it like, well, I'm going to give it a chance to bounce off of this 449, maybe even 448.50, which at that point, I'm already in the red so much, and I'm just digging my hole, right? The hole is digging harder. At this point, I'm basically back to red on the day. Went from being up $300, and now I'm down. And I'm like, okay, we break below 449.50, and I'm telling myself, well, there's support down here at 449 area. We dipped all the way down here to 448.50. And then at this point, I'm down like $600 on this trade. And I'm like, okay, it starts to bounce back up, which is amazing. It starts to bounce back up here, bounces back up to the 449 area. And I'm like, okay, this is it. It's going to be the end of day rally. We're going to be like, and we're going to rally to all time or the high of day. We're going to rally up there to the 452 area. We're going to make so much money. And all I could think about was like, okay, this is going to happen. I'm going to get this move. Instead of focusing on the chart. What was the chart saying, Patrick? The idea that, okay, the market's going to just rally up at the end of the day. It's like, okay, it's going to V up. It's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. That idea was so far from like what was actually going on, because you can see, we're just trending lower, right? The market is just trending lower. And throughout this whole move lower, I'm like, well, it's going to bounce. It's going to bounce. And I'm just telling myself, it's going to bounce. It's going to bounce. It's going to bounce. But instead, what does it do? It ends up just selling and selling, and it breaks all the way down to 447. I ended up having to get out once we couldn't hold this area here, the 448.50, because remember, we already had this drop, and I was like, at this point, I'm not going to do the same thing. And maybe now, the end of the day, it's going to rally back up here. But, again, there's a reason that we put these stops. There's a reason that we have an idea of like why we should get out of this. Because obviously, if we can't hold 448 or 449.50, it's not bullish. It's bearish, right? It's breaking to the downside. We had the lower high, and then we're breaking down. That right there is like, okay, Patrick, textbook. This is no longer bullish. The idea this is going to rally up to all time or to day, the high of day, after breaking through the support here, it's a Fugazi, it's a Fugazi, it's a Wazi. I let a green day turn to a red day. I tried to basically trade like some serious chop, and then I didn't stick to my plan. That 449.50. If I would have gotten out at 449.50, that would have protected my loss. I probably would have gotten out for like, a very small loss on the day. And then I could have switched to a bearish thesis. I could have bought put options at that point, and really got more bearish at that point. But instead, I fought the trend. I fought the stop. I didn't get out where I should have, knowing that area was support. I was too focused on just like, the market going higher. Like, oh, the market's going to go higher. I know it's going to go higher. End of the day, it's going to go higher. Like I had this whole bias, this whole thesis. And that's really what did me in here. That's really what got me here is I was so focused on the idea of being right. I was so focused on this thing, like it's going to break, it's going to go up. Like the market's going to pump end of day. I'm going to walk away with so much profit. And that's all I was focused on. And that's exactly why I'm red. And it's going to be painful because it's Friday. And now I've got Saturday and I've got Sunday to think about it. It should have been pretty obvious. 449.50, if it breaks, we got to get out. And that's exactly what we should have done. But instead, we were stuck with the bias. Stuck to this like idea of wanting to be so right here. And ended up paying the price. And it's Friday. And there it is. A red day, Friday. It happens. It's part of it. We're going through it. If you guys haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe button, those buttons down below. I'll talk to you guys later on.